Lucifer in Hebrew tongue means the light bearer or the bearer of light. Light in reference to the knowledge of God or the divine, the one who is supposed to carry the truth of God. We have to remember that a lot of the New Testament was written in Greek. The word devil in Greek translates to slanderer or accuser. John 8:44, Yeshua or Jesus says, "You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires." The devil, Lucifer, and Satan is not a real entity. Now, I am not here to tell you what to believe, but I am here to tell you my own experience through study and through practice. I grew up in an evangelical Christian Lutheran church, so this is my own perspective and opinion. I do believe in the teachings of Christ and some of what the Bible teaches, but not all of it, because that would be insanity. Like cannibalism, for example. Now, the most common book and chapter that Christians will reference in regards to their belief of Satan and the devil is Ezekiel 28. And somehow they try to equate the same entity or the same being or the same energy from Ezekiel 28 to the same entity or being or energy in Isaiah 14, as well as the Satan of Job that tries to tempt Jesus, or the snake in Genesis, for example. Now, the thing about the Bible that we have to understand is that it has been translated and picked through and added to and subtracted from, and many of the books of the Bible have been banned, literally, straight up taken from us, but that's besides the point. My point here is that the Bible, specifically the Old Testament, was for the most part written in Hebrew, and many of the words in Hebrew do not have direct translations. If we're using the word Satan, the closest translation would be the adversary, because Satan in Hebrew would be Hasatan. Now, there is this unspoken rule that is called the law of first mention when studying scripture. So anytime something is mentioned for the first time, that will be how the term is defined for the rest of the Bible. And the first book of the Bible that mentions Satan is Numbers. Now, this is a story in the Bible where Balaam goes to curse Israel, basically, and the devil, or the angel of the Lord, as it says in the passage, appears to Balaam and the donkey. He does this because Balaam was beating his donkey, and the angel of the Lord appears and says that he was sent as Hasatan, or the adversary, to oppose him for doing wrong by beating the donkey. Now, this is just one particular example, but it is a pretty significant story, so I would definitely recommend going to reference that if you have time in the book of Numbers, specifically Numbers 22. So you can look that up, but it's significant because it's the first time that the devil, Lucifer, or Hasatan, or Satan, is mentioned. And as I said, the closest translation would be the adversary. What I'm getting at here is it is not a person or entity, it is a role, an archetype, a state of consciousness. Satan and God can be seen as almost one of the same entity. They work together a lot throughout the Bible, like the Satan in Job. The Satan in Job, God uses as his spy, as his right hand. Or, of course, we can always talk about the quote that all Christians will bring up, "O Lucifer, son of the morning," or however it goes. I'll quote it somewhere on the screen. But Lucifer closely translates to Venus, and we know that Venus is the morning and the evening star. So when it's the morning star, that means it competes with the sun. It is in the sky before the sun rises. It opposes the sun. Some of the issues I really do think are derived from this dualistic philosophy of, good and evil, light and dark. And I think that terminology is not used carefully enough. I think that people are now waking up to it, but it's this contrast, like they are not on the same team or something. Like you can't have one without the other, because you have to, otherwise the other one wouldn't exist. All ancient gods before the monotheistic religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, they were all representations of good and evil, not one or the other. I mean, Yahweh in the Old Testament was literally a representation of good and evil. He talks about so many fucked up things. Don't even get me started on Yahweh. That's why I don't know about him. But like Isaiah 14, "I, the Lord, have created good and evil, and I bring light and I create darkness. I am a jealous God." We also have to understand that Rome was very pagan in nature, and by pagan, that just means anything that's not a monotheistic religion. So not Christianity, not Judaism, and not Islam. So they had lots of different gods. So anything that was polytheistic was deemed as evil. And the devil in the ancient world, for lack of a better term, was the personification of the shadow, or even the ego. It was like the voice of the accuser. This dualistic thinking is really a fracture in the psyche, and it prevents us from our own personal power and our own personal responsibility. In Deuteronomy, it literally says that God will have just as much pleasure in destroying you, sending you famine and disease. Just doesn't make any sense. How can the Christian God Yahweh take pleasure in destroying someone or something, sending disease and famine, but they're going to say that Satan or Hasatan, the adversary, or Lucifer or the devil is quote unquote bad? Another interesting thing to note is that in the book of Genesis, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, in the English version, it says that God looked at the Trinity, behold, man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. But us is actually a mistranslation. It's actually the Hebrew word ihad, which means one knowing, which is the opposite of dualism. More or less what I'm trying to say is that the original intention, for the most part, was not dualistic in nature, and that the components of good and evil, light and dark, are coexisting and always have been and always will be. The Bible has been heavily edited, translated, added to, and subtracted from, so we will never really know everything that we were meant to know. But we can in the heart. When you transcend dualism, you transcend suffering, essentially. To some extent, I believe that the devil would be the ego. But just as God said, I, the Lord, create light and darkness, you integrate both polarities and you love everything, just as Jesus taught. Much love, guys. If you guys like videos like this, go check out my YouTube. I'm at the Cosmic Rose. For personal readings, you can click the link in my bio. I love you.